For most people, the NFL stands for one thing: not for long. And for head coaches, this is no different. Throughout the years, we've seen ownership get shorter and tighter leashes for these coaches, with maybe even some coaches being one and done. That is a new trend we're seeing a phenomenon of in the last couple years. And overall, if you miss on the quarterback, you're basically cooked as a head coach. And we've seen this happen time and time again. And this season is no different. So today, we're going to go into all the NFL coaches and see whose seat is hottest. I am going to give you the top 3 hottest seats for NFL head coaches and what they can do to potentially save your job. I'm Jack Gretler. This is Pro Ball Pod, and let's get right into it. All right, first up on our list, we got Brian Daboll of the New York Giants. Now, this is Daboll's 4th year as the head coach for the organization, and the first year was excellent. They went to the playoffs. Saquon Barkley went ballistic. Daniel Jones looked like a franchise quarterback, and you know what? They rode this honeymoon to a playoff victory against the 13-4 Vikings. Good times, am I right? And ultimately, this all came into an offseason where things looked up. Saquon was staying. Daniel Jones signed a nice 4-year extension, and they thought they may have a guy and they may have a team that could be truly special. But after that, that's just not how it went for these guys. The Giants proceeded with a measly 6-11 following season, and then melted down completely last year, getting down to 3 wins and a top 3 pick. After paying Daniel Jones, the reality is he just disappeared. He was injured most of 2023, 2024. He was healthy, but he played awful, and they had no direction. Not to mention losing Saquon Barkley in the offseason was also a very rough blow, as he was covering up a lot of flaws in this Giants offense. So going into this, Daboll's magical team had effectively been dismantled overnight, and after another rough year, this is looking to be make or break for Daboll. He came into the season with a solid and underrated defense and some good weapons, but his whole season rode on the fate of one man, Jackson Dart. Jackson Dart is the one they traded up for and hand selected to be their franchise guy. And especially after paying Daniel Jones an awful contract like that, you can't afford to be wrong on a guy like Dart. He needs to show up, and he needs to show up now. Now, this task gets much tougher when you bring in the factors that Malik Nabers is out for the season, but you know, they have some talent. Their offensive line, a little iffy, especially on the interiors, but they can play. Cam Scadaboo has been a nice addition for them. He looks like the lead back, and while they definitely losing Malik hurts, they still have some solid weapons in Wandale and Darius Slayton, so ultimately it's going to be up to Daboll. If he wants to shave this job, he's going to have to lock in, and Jackson Dart's going to have to look the part. They have some weapons. They have some talent. This isn't a team that's void of talent. This team should be competitive. This team realistically should be winning more than they are at this point. And if Jackson Dart can look the part, I think Daboll could save his job. But if Jackson Dart starts to flail even a little bit, I expect Daboll to get the boot. My status for Brian Daboll is going to be a scorching hot seat. I get it. The playoff run was awesome, but you know what? It was years ago. And that whiff on Daniel Jones is just something that most coaches and GMs would not survive. So Jackson Dart needs to show up, and he needs to show up now if they have any hope of keeping their job moving forward. So overall, I think the likelihood of Daboll being fired at the end of the year makes it a 7 out of 10, because despite it, even if Dart shows a little bit of progress, they're going to need to see a lot for them to trust Daboll to continue to develop him. So give me a 7 out of 10 on the likelihood of being fired and a scorching hot seat for Brian Daboll. The next coach we're going to look into on the hot seat is one that has a complex future, to say the least. It's Miami Dolphins head coach Mike McDaniel. This is his 4th year in Miami, and you know what? The first 2 years were stellar. They made the playoffs. They won 9 and 11 games, respectively, and they looked awesome. Tyreek Hill was an OPOY candidate both years, going for like 1,700 plus yards, double-digit touchdowns. Tua looked the part when he was playing. That's the key. And their offense looked like one of the most unstoppable units, with a defense that was doing enough under Vic Fangio for part of the time. And honestly, they looked part. But last year, it was an up and down season. Tua was in and out of the lineup. They looked dicey at best. And after finishing 8-9, you're starting to get a little worried, but not necessarily panicking yet. But after the start this year, I can say we can officially hit the panic button on the Miami Dolphins season. Tua has been unable to stay on the field consistently. He stayed on the field so far, but he's been up and down, honestly, and there's been a lot of questions on if he can be Miami's guy moving forward. Tyreek Hill, the offensive motor of this team, the last 3 years just went down with what could be a potentially career-ending leg injury, and honestly, McDaniel is going to have to find a way to thrive without without him. He's done a great job making Devon Achane into a star. He's gotten Darren Waller involved this week, and Jalen Waddle is obviously going to take over as a target machine like he was in his rookie year. But honestly, I have my questions moving forward because the reality is this team is still 1-4. Their offense is dicey, up and down at best, and bad on its worst days. And the reality is that defense has been awful so far. It's been a rough season for that defense. They've gotten cooked by everyone they've run into effectively, and the reality is they shouldn't be this bad. They have a strong-ish front seven, but their secondary is one of the worst in the league outside of Minka, so that's definitely something to consider. But the reality is McDaniel's been here 4 years. It needs to be better. And from a Dolphins perspective, while maybe McDaniels hasn't been a bottom three coach necessarily, he has a good offense. I think they'd rather be a little early than too late on the firing of Mike McDaniel. And if this season continues down the path it's currently on, I think the Dolphins could be looking at a complete reset button. Is Tua the guy? If you're at a top 3, top 5 pick, you could be looking at some of these quarterbacks and they could be intriguing options to you. You could be potentially looking at a reset. They've had the same GM since 2016 and don't have much to show for it. They still haven't won a playoff game in over 20 years. And I think, honestly, there's questions on if Tua can get it done because when it's clutch time, Tua's nowhere to be found. When it's cold, Tua's nowhere to be found. And these are just major concerns about the Miami Dolphins. I don't think, with Tyreek Hill coming out of the lineup, it's already going to be a big change moving forward. And the reality is, if you're the Dolphins ownership, you may pull the trigger a little early and do a complete reset, build around your pieces, Devon Achane, Jalen Waddle, and hope to get a new coach in here that can establish a new culture. So overall, has McDaniels done the worst job? Absolutely not. But the reality is, Miami's greatly underperforming this year, and I think they'd rather be too early, than too late. Overall, my final rating for McDaniels' chances of getting fired is around a 6.5 out of 10. I think he's a little safer than Daboll, and I think Miami could be patient, but I could easily see them pulling the trigger if things continue to go south this season and doing a complete reset. His rating is going to be steaming hot for me. And last but not least, I think the hottest seat in the NFL is kind of obvious at this point. Titans head coach Brian Callahan. To be frank, he's only had 2 years compared to these guys and has seen virtually no success. He's been one of the worst head coaches in the league. He took a Titans team that was kind of underperforming under Vrabel on a down year and took it to the number 1 overall pick. Now, let's just let that sink in. This Titans team last year was supposed to have a underrated top 10 defense and an offense that had its concern but had the weapons. It had Brian Callahan who was going to lead the charge. He's just the guy that helped develop Joe Burrow and make the Bengals into this superstar offense, and they already had a top 10 defense supposedly in place, and he just did nothing. They completely melted down with a 3-14 record to get the number 1 overall pick, and ultimately they took the swing on Cam Ward. I respect it. I think that was definitely the right decision, but the reality is this team greatly underperformed last year, and they are melting down this year. This team is catastrophically bad. I mean, let's look at the facts here. This team started out 0-4. They should have been 0-5. Let's not give Callahan credit for that win because the reality is DeMarcado runs that ball in the end zone, that game's over. And Cam Ward's with that pick and Arizona fumbles it backwards into their own end zone, that game's over. There's not enough credit. That was more of an Arizona meltdown than necessarily a Tennessee success. So moving forward, they've been absolutely awful on both sides of the ball, honestly, underperforming again on defense, and most importantly, on offense, they have been bad, and they should not be this bad. Tony Pollard's a solid back. They have some solid offensive linemen in place. They have Calvin Ridley, who's maybe not an elite receiver, but he's solid. And looking at this team, they still look awful. He gave up play calling duties the previous week, and they still could not get anything going on that side of the ball. Now, the reality is, if Brian Callahan is giving up play calling duties, what exactly does he give you as a head coach? The whole point of offensive-minded head coaches are so your coordinators aren't getting poached and you have a consistent offense. There's no offensive-minded head coach that's having any success that is sacrificing play calls at this point. They have their offense, they install it, and they call it, and that is where most of our elite offenses are coming from. So the fact that he is giving up play calling duties, and it not only does it not getting better, but it's staying the same, shows that maybe he's not the guy moving forward. I don't really see the value. Is he a great leader? I mean, he seems okay, but not like enough where he's an offensive mind that's not going to call the offense. It's just concerning. The reality is Tennessee needs to move on before it's too late for Cam Ward. I mean, you let this guy stay another year or two and this offense continues to struggle and they continue to get nothing going, they could ruin Cam Ward's development forever. And this is a number one overall pick. This is a valuable asset for them. They can't just give up on it, because the reality is a lot of this stuff falls on Callahan. I still think they have potential to be an okay offense at least, or not least, not the worst team in the league level offense. And I think they need to do it before it's too late. Overall, my likelihood of him getting fired is a 10 out of 10. I think I'm very confident that it's going to happen if they continue at this pace. His seat is boiling hot by my standards, and overall, I think this could get done in the middle of the season. I get it. The Arizona win was fun, and you gotta give them their flowers for it, but I don't know. There's not going to be every team each week is going to have a monster meltdown like that and give you a win. So overall, his seat is boiling hot. I feel like he's useless at this point on his side of the ball if he's not calling plays. And the reality is the team is just not looking good so far. But that's all I have for y'all today. I hope you enjoyed this episode with the coaching hot seats, and put it down in the comments. Who do you think is most likely to get the boot first? And see who's right. I think it's Callahan personally, but obviously you could have your own perspective. So if you enjoyed, like, subscribe, and thank you for watching. Don't forget to follow the socials, and we'll be back here next week, same time. Thank you for watching. I'm Jack Gretler of Pro Ball Pod. I'm out.